So next we have on Claire Thomas. So welcome, Claire. Claire is the founder and CEO of Empact Group. You are one of Australia's fastest growing consultancies and AFR's best place to work winner in 2025. You've in under 3 years, you've scaled a firm from a one-person band to 8-figure individual as a group. You are a person that has a huge amount of knowledge in how to support a neuroaffirming workplace, and we are exceptionally lucky to have you here today, Claire. Many people, I'm going to say, want to employ neurodiverse individuals, but I'm going to say struggle to do it very well. So people have a lot of individuals maybe in the workplace. Some may have disclosed, some may have not disclosed. But what I would say is people's experience, and we know from ADHD Australia, hasn't always been positive. So we're really lucky to have you here today, Claire, wanting to learn a little bit more from you, and particularly about what has shaped, what shapes the workplace, learning about yourself and learning about what you've done to help others. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mel. And gosh, that's a nerve-wracking introduction with all of those comments, but it has been an exciting journey building Empact over just a few years. Let me first start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of land that I'm presenting on. I'm on Ngunnawal country today, and it's such a privilege to work and live and play on Ngunnawal land. And I'll extend that acknowledgement to all First Nations people dialing in today, whether you are Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander. And I suppose because we have people dialing in from all over the place as a global conference, I'd like to acknowledge First Nations people from wherever you might be as well. So yes, Mel, as you mentioned, my name's Claire and I'm the CEO of Empact Group. We're a management consultancy that focuses on, I guess, building the confidence and capability and the efficiency of businesses in government, not-for-profit and private as well. It doesn't necessarily sound like the sort of work that is built for affirming neurodivergent individuals, but it really has been such a positive adventure for us, and I'm really excited to share some of what I've learnt along the way. So if I talk to the plan for today, let me first be honest, the squiggly line is very deliberate. While my intent is to cover part of my journey and what starting Empact has looked like for me, and I'll talk through some of the lessons learned, as well as the most important part, practical ideas that you might be able to take away, whatever your level and role in your organisation. I suppose for my colleagues online who prefer a really clear linear approach, that's not necessarily how my brain works best. So we might have a little bit of starbursting along the way, but I hope you'll be able to follow along with me. So this cool kid. When you see this cool kid, I'm sure you can tell automatically that we're going to build a successful management consultancy when we grow up. So how does a cool kid like this build a government consultancy? Another cool thing to have built. I definitely struggled as a young person, being both too much, I suppose, but also in response to feeling too much a lot of the time, quite a socially anxious kid as well. And so balancing that, when I cared about something, I'd put so much into it. I remember in year 7, I asked my science teacher, we were doing this topic and it was electricity, and I just got this light bulb that you could use on a potato and all of this cool stuff. And I asked, can I teach this class? And I think the teacher was expecting me to run maybe a 2-minute, introduction to this thing that I had. And I planned this full 75-minute presentation and I loved it. Now, did it win me friends? Definitely, most popular kid in class, but I had so much fun with it. I was the debating captain at school. I had sport or activities 5 nights a week. My hyperactivity was definitely put into everything that I did when I cared about it. When I didn't care about something, though, and I think that was the tricky part, when I didn't, I think about a different perspective, which was maths class. So I've got a feeling my mum might be dialing in today. So I don't know, Mum, if you know this, but by the time I got to year 11, I had one teacher poor Mr. Duff, who would put me in detention every single class because I didn't understand the reason why we were doing the particular maths we were doing. And I would ask him questions and I was genuinely trying to understand, but I didn't care. And so for being disruptive, I wasn't in class. I didn't get lunch times for quite a while. When I think of the flip side of that, even less engaged legal studies classes. I thought I would love legal studies. I love debating. But when I realized that it was actually just 100% rote learning of old Latin stuff, that wasn't for me, and I slept through 100% of those classes. So if I take that through to work, before studying Empact, I loved my work when I knew it had a purpose, when I knew that I was making a difference in some way, when I could draw the dots on really complex things. That's when I knew I could help others realize what they were there to be doing as well. When I got stuck in bureaucracy, when I got stuck in politics, or worse, when my enthusiasm or me trying to do a really good job at something was taken as being competitive or being a threat, that didn't make sense to me when we're here to do something that means something. And so that's where I struggled. And when I thought about starting a business, it wasn't necessarily initially about being neurodivergent affirming. I was one of the late diagnosed folks, so diagnosed about 6 months before I started Empact. What I wanted to do was start a business that put purpose first, that empowered to act, which is where the name Empact Group comes from. When I think about what drove me, it really was having that agency, that creativity, but knowing that I could make an impact. And so I guess from there, I started Empact Group. And as mentioned, it's gone quite well. And we can talk through that a little bit more. But I suppose the question that most people ask, and the question that I was asking myself when I started, was around this challenge of I don't know where to start, particularly if it's something that we haven't done before. Now, it might feel like common sense, but to me, the answer is we start with our values. So I spent a lot of time working through with the early team. Look, the really early team was just me, but with other colleagues and other friends that I trusted on what our values could be. And this is where we landed. What I think is important, though, is how you bring those values to life in action. So we have our values in action framework. And I think for people dialing in at the moment, it doesn't matter if you don't necessarily have the role to be able to shape or change your organization's values. What you can do is think about how those values play out in real life in a way that affirms all people, no matter how they think, no matter what their bonus features. So that takes curiosity. And I guess for me, the framework that made most sense to me was one that I was already using in consulting. So I come from a human-centered design background, and some of you might recognize something similar to this. This comes from service design, and it's a double diamond. And the way that it works is we start off with curiosity, we go broad. So we go into discovery first. We want to learn as much as we can. We want to ask people questions. We want to read what already exists, make sure that we're not putting burden on people who have already shared their burdens before, but learning as much as we can. From there, we converge. We start to work together to figure out, right, what is the key problem we're trying to solve? And from there, we can develop a range of options and try and test as we deliver to make sure that what works sticks. And I think even though it's a really high level framework, it's really applicable. And I found it really applicable for this because the expectation isn't that you know all the answers before you start. Mel mentioned, I think that, lots of people want to be in neuroaffirming workforce, or many people like me who are neurodivergent really hope that their workplace will be affirming, but don't necessarily know how things could change. Really, curiosity, I believe, is core to this. And so for us, I guess this gave us a whole lot of insights that we could apply really, really quickly. The insights for us, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these were similar, but I do encourage people to test this yourself, was that people were looking for clarity, for flexibility, For openness, and by openness, I suppose I mean the ability to come as you are, to bring as much of yourself to work as you choose to, and then being real. They wanted to know that leadership would show up honestly and authentically. And to be honest, that was tricky at first, not because I'm not proud about my neurodivergence or anything like that, but so much of the things that I think hold us back in being a neurodivergent, affirming society is rules and expectations and norms that were built in the sort of offices that me and my team weren't necessarily invited to, when they were established. And so it takes a little while and a lot of self-reflection and work to actually stop and identify what norms and existing expectations you're already modeling, and to be able to break those down. For me, what that meant was I have a coach, Danny from the Divergent Edge, which I highly recommend, who I've met with every fortnight for coming up to 3 years now, to help me identify when was I following neurotypical norms, or when was I following other, traditional expectations of leadership, and what would it actually look like for me to be authentically myself and lead from the front. Now, some of the initiatives that we came up with, I won't go through them all now, but if there's any that you want to reach out and chat through at some point, I'm very happy to. A couple of key ones I think that are helpful in terms of job ads. So obviously starting culture starts with as you bring people in. So it starts at the beginning. We try and be really, really clear in our ads of any specifics that are truly necessary. So any that aren't, we get rid of. That's not fair. That's not reasonable. But any that are definite must-haves, we're explicit about. We try really hard to give examples of similar roles or similar backgrounds where people might bring capabilities that are transferable. So if we're not necessarily looking for a one-to-one fit, we're looking for somebody with a certain skill set, capability, competency. Well, let's give some examples to folks of what that can look like, so that they can see themselves when it's not necessarily the same title that they might have had in the past. And then where we can't be explicit, or where we want people to bring their own something that we wouldn't be able to articulate, then we call that out as well. So we explicitly say, there's some things we can't name in a list because we want you to bring what you have to this role. Let's talk about that, but we'll be explicit where we can be. Then we also run it through a gender bias checker, because as we can talk about in a little bit, when you solve for one, you solve for many. So when we know that we reduce gender bias in our ads, we're also making things clearer. We're also making sure that people who, don't necessarily resonate with words like strong and deep experience and all of these sort of things, we can pare back a little bit. So that gender bias checker is actually free online. You can Google that and use that in your own ads as well. Flexibility, I think we all understand the importance of this, but we implemented flexible by default, and that seems to baffle people, which confuses me. It won't work in all roles, I suppose, or all organization types, I suppose. But for us, if there's maybe a client need where somebody can't be flexible, well, that's on the manager to work through the options. It's not on the individual. For us, 80% of our team are part-time. That includes the majority of leadership. We work from our office, from client site, from home. Again, it comes back to the values that we hold. If we are curious and we try and understand what people need to do their best, if we trust our staff to do what they need to do, and if we're clear on the impact that we're trying to make, well, then there's no reason not to be flexible. And that follows through to our openness. We have a simple dress code. Your hairstyle, your personal style doesn't change your professionalism. And then in terms of the reality and being real and showing up, there's a few things, but I suppose a key one is every week I have a drop-in with the whole company. Anybody's welcome to dial in, and we talk about whatever is on people's mind. That's led to the You Can Ask That series, which is different staff sharing something really personal about themselves that they want others to understand. And I suppose what that's created is a foundation that isn't just cookie cutter but is built from the specific needs and wants and aspirations of the people in our company. And that's something that can be replicated across any company. So then the next challenge that comes up for people is, how do I keep it fair? Now, this one's loaded, I think, because I think at the moment, to me, fairness doesn't mean one thing applies for all people. To me, I believe that if we know the purpose of the thing that we're trying to affect, well, then fair is understanding what meeting that purpose looks like for each person. So again, it comes back to values. And to me, the two key values here are trust and courage. If we trust people, I think there's two beliefs that we need to bring. Most people do their best. Most people want to do their best. Most people are coming to work or to their profession or to their studies with a really positive intent. And our second belief is supporting one group lifts many. Now, if we bring trust and courage to that, then really, I don't know, the fairness factor sort of starts to shift a little bit. So let's think a little bit about most people doing their best. I have a feeling that this question about fairness in some part comes from this fear, a scarcity, a loss. You know, the rates of diagnosis for people who are neurodivergent, who have ADHD, are rising. And it's almost as if that's scary for some folks, that maybe they feel that there's some inequity coming. But actually, I love this. And I don't know if anybody else saw Dr. Matt Agnew's posts recently following some of the challenges overseas at the moment. But I found this quote really lovely. We don't know who actually needs supports in the first place. We do know that numbers are rising, but actually that just means we have clarity. We can see more, we can support more. This isn't about taking from one person and giving to another. If most people are doing their best, actually the opposite is sort of true. And I think the other angle where this comes into play is that people get concerned, I suppose, that some will take the piss, essentially. Really, I think that's when we need to not be thinking about this as being, some people receive things and some people don't, but actually, are we clear on the outcomes we're trying to achieve? Are we clear on the expectations of people in our organisation, which is what folks are asking for, is clarity. If we are, and if people aren't meeting those expectations, well, that's a performance management conversation. That doesn't mean we offer less affirming support. That doesn't mean we clamp down on rules. It doesn't mean we apply one policy for everybody. It means we have to have those courageous conversations and support people to make sure that they're in the right roles for their capability, for their business need. It's not one or the other. When we confuse performance management with somebody taking advantage, I think that cuts down the many for a few people that need an extra bit of support. So I think that's we can do better than that. And my computer has frozen. Hey, there we go. It comes down to the same core things, as I mentioned, the clear, flexible, open, and real. And when we're concerned that something isn't fair, again, we can just go back to, what are we trying to achieve here? What is the purpose that we're trying to influence? And I genuinely believe that if most people are doing their best, that fairness piece moves along pretty quickly. But it does mean we have to be honest. That's where the openness is really important, and talking about the things that are affecting us, that understanding what the concerns are of the people that might be raising this as a question. But really, if we're helping all people do their best at work, there's not much more that can be fair than that. Then in terms of supporting one group lifts many. Now, I'm not just a person with ADHD. I'm a woman, I'm a parent, I'm somebody with ups and downs in the mental health side of things. And I know that when my work environment is supportive of me and all of me, I can bring more of myself to work and I can be more effective. And we all know that this is true. When we think of it from an intersectionality lens, being an affirming work environment means if you're already supporting different communities, if you're already supporting underrepresented groups, in some part, you're already a neurodivergent affirming organisation. There might just be some additional things that you can have in place. We know that, make sure you listen to the researchers' presentations throughout this conference for the current stats. But my understanding is we know that 30 to 70% of the neurodivergent population is also part of the LGBTQIA plus community as well. So if we are not a LGBTQIA plus affirming organisation, then we're not a neurodivergent affirming organisation. So that means that our policies are really clear in our stance on this. Similarly, we can't be neurodivergent affirming if we're not also an anti-racist organisation and explicit on that as well. If we can create an environment where supporting our staff to succeed doesn't mean that they have to present in a certain way, doesn't mean that there's an expectation of certain norms. Some of the things that we can reduce, if we're not so concerned about eye contact, if we're not concerned about people having their screens on, about smiling, about volume, about confidence, if we're not as concerned about extroversion as being a leadership feature, then we start to mean that our workplace is more accessible to more people and more bonus features and more folks bringing as much of themselves as they can to work. And our businesses can be more diverse and more effective as well. And I think so far, I guess, when I've been speaking, it's been, let's have a really nice place to work. But shortly, I'll talk to as well the business impacts that this has actually had for us, which, as Mel mentioned at the start, we've been one of the fastest growing companies in the country right now. And I genuinely believe it's because we know that a neuroaffirming workplace actually lifts all employees. This is the simplest way that we do it. If I think back to those double diamonds, if I think back to curiosity, this is something that I lean on all the time. Purpose over process. So yes, processes are important. Yes, being fair and transparent and reasonable is really essential. But what's most important is understanding the purpose. What are we trying to affect? If we know that, you're a workplace that backs you in when you say, today's a hard day, I'm going to be on emails. If you know that you can say, hey, I'm going to need a walking meeting today, I need fresh air. If you know that you've got that purpose first, almost everything else is solvable. Okay, so that's great. That's all some really nice stuff. I get why it's important, but we don't have the budget. Now, when I started out, I put a total of, I think, $6,000 into starting Empact, and just under 3 years later, we're at $12.5 million business in revenue, which is exciting. But along the way, there hasn't necessarily been the budget to do what I thought were the necessary things to do. But really, when we think about it a different way, again, listen to the researchers and follow their stats. But my understanding is, and my experience is, that inclusion is good business. For us, it costs us approximately $57,000 to hire somebody. That's from the recruitment fees, the time spent on interviews, the onboarding process, the time before they're billable in their client engagement role. So it is a significant investment. Now, I won't go too much into the little formulas here, but essentially, if I think of taking my company of 60 people and followed the industry goal of 15% turnover post-probation over a forward 3 years, for the average in the industry, that will cost them $1.5 million. Now, for us, we've created an environment where we are curious, we trust our people, and we are neuroaffirming from the start. We are therefore inclusive and affirming from the start. It means our turnover has been so much lower. We've had 4 people leave post-probation, 2 to start their own business, which we backed in, and 2 who went into a totally different industry. That gives us an extra $1.3 million to play with if we were to take the industry norm. But we don't all have that environment. We don't all have that opportunity. So again, to me, it comes back to this view that everything is solvable if we just ask questions, if we just are vulnerable, and if we are just curious. It comes back to the double diamonds. Let's ask. If we talk to the team, all right, team, we only have X amount of dollars, but what is the problem we're trying to solve? We want to make sure that we feel supported at work. For us, that led to wanting to open our own office. And I really wanted our office to be neurodivergent affirming, and the team did as well. This is not a very pretty slide, sorry. But the way that we did that through the discovery piece was we asked people's ideas. We went out, we created a Pinterest board where anybody in the company could put in their submissions. I feel a little bit anxious putting up a picture of cutlery on the screen because I know how controversial that is for our community. Don't worry, these were not the ones that were finally successful. This is just a representative sample. But where we landed was an office that has dimmable light space, like dimmable switches in every room, fidgets in every room. I've got a couple of mine at my desk at the moment. We have headphones for all staff. And I guess, again, when it comes to that visibility, knowing that it's completely normal and completely accepted to be wearing headphones that are noise cancelling when you're signalling that you don't necessarily want a chat right now, or you're going off to a darker space, that's helpful for anybody. That's helpful for somebody that was up late studying. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody with ADHD or neurodivergent. And so from here, we've been able to build a neurodivergent affirming office as well, which has just been fantastic. And when we bring in clients, one of my favorite things is to see them actually come in, look at our bowl of fidgets in the middle of the table, and curiously take one out and start fidgeting, and then relax, and then join the meeting, and then be able to be present because they can let down that mask a little bit and just be there for the purpose of the conversation. So as I said, yes, there are affordable ways to do this, but also this is good business sense. We have a majority neurodivergent team. The majority of our team work flexibly. This approach has let us have a strong gender balance, strong leadership from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, and it works from a business perspective. Yes, we're a small business, so there's probably folks listening as well who think, yeah, but I'm part of something massive. We work with government, we work with organisations that are up to 3,000 people and try and help them through this. Really, when it comes down to it, my personal lessons learned are if you bring curiosity, if you're willing to learn from your mistakes, gosh, RSD is a real thing, and that's hard yakka for some of us. But a neurodivergent affirming workforce is good business and good strategy. So I'd love to talk more about this. I know that we're pressed for time because it's such an exciting conference all around, but please do reach out. This is only just the tip of what I've learned over this time. It's such an exciting journey, and really, I genuinely encourage you, just try something small. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, and yeah, it's worth being a neurodivergent affirming business. Thank you so much.
Wow, I don't know where to start with that. It's really interesting. You hear so many presentations, Claire, in this space, and I've got to admit that's probably one of the best that I've actually seen. It's really personalised and gave some really great, I'm going to say, practical examples of how to really look at a neuroaffirming workplace and what that looks like from the lens of somebody with ADHD, and seeing it slightly differently, which is absolutely fantastic. We haven't had the opportunity to see it in that way before. I'm just keen to hear from you. Look, I think that, what I see is many individuals, and I know from lots of organizations I've worked in, many individuals often say that, you know, they've had their diagnosis of ADHD or maybe autism or a neurodifference for a significant period of time, but they haven't had the confidence to be able to talk to their managers about challenges. There's this real think about, you know, well, and obviously you put it beautifully that there's just so many benefits, but for many people, they fear that. They fear, what if I come forward? What if I tell people? What are some of the things or advice that you would give individuals with ADHD on how to have those courageous conversations with your manager or your employer? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think I'd start by suggesting that if there are folks listening that maybe have more of the leadership privilege, that actually creating the environment in the first place that makes it safe, the burden shouldn't be on the individual. But where that's not the environment that you're in, I suppose my advice would be first look for other clues. So as I mentioned, a neurodivergent affirming workforce is also a place where other like there's other clues of inclusion. So if you can see other clues of inclusion, you know that this is probably a place where somebody is going to be able to listen and be compassionate, and look for that person to start with. Look for some clue. It could be something that's not exactly about neurodivergence. It could be a rainbow flag. It could be something. And then when it comes to those conversations, I think share as much as you feel safe sharing. You have the right for reasonable adjustments at an absolute minimum, but really you don't need to put a label if you're not comfortable yet. I think being honest about what I've seen work really well is people say, you know, to get the most out of my day, here's how I work best. So for me to achieve this task, what would work best for you to get the most out of me is if I work these shorter hours because my brain works really well in the afternoon, or something like that to start with, and just test and learn as you go.
I know that's fantastic, Claire, and I think it's really great to help individuals understand, first of all, how to have that conversation, but also, like you say, you know, putting it back on the employer. You know, what's the employer actually doing to create those safe environments? I suppose, you know, one of the things is as well, I agree with you in terms of it's great. I look at lots of places I've worked, and I think about particularly when I joined, and you know, I joined Melba Support Organisation, and there was a lady there, and still is there, a lady called Kate that you'll get to see later, Kate Taylor. But she's a lady with a disability that reached out to me and was instantly helped me to feel really comfortable and really safe within the organisation. And so I suppose the question to you is do you feel that an organisation would maybe benefit from potentially champions or people that they feel that they could maybe reach out to, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I do think, particularly in larger organizations, champions work incredibly well. I think where the difference can be, where they work best, I think is where it goes beyond the person that is purely visible on maybe those days of acknowledgement, and people that are actually sharing their own experiences, their own challenges, the things that they've got wrong. I think that vulnerability is really important for us to feel safe enough to share more of our own concerns. I do think as well, a lot of organisations have different employee kind of groups and committees where there's a shared experience. I think they can be fantastic too. But linking those together, that intersectionality, I think is where the difference happens, because otherwise, again, it can feel quite isolating to be separate. So how can we find those different ways to connect across as well?
No, I think that's fantastic. So I suppose the next question I've got, I've just got so many questions for you, and using this opportunity is fantastic whilst we're here. One of the things I get a lot is a lot of leaders come to me, and it's really interesting. Across ADHD Australia, we get a huge amount of managers, leaders, and just go, I don't know how to actually support a person. You know, everybody's so unique and individual. Where do I even start? I don't want to offend somebody. I don't want to, you know, have a difficult conversation at times because I don't want to appear rude. What What do I do? And these are individuals sometimes that I think have gone out there and they've done a massive amount of research into, you know, how to support individuals with ADHD, how to support individuals that
Yeah.
are neurodivergent, and they're really struggling sometimes with that more personal approach and that sensitivity around wanting to do well as a leader, but not necessarily knowing how to start and have that conversation actually as
Yeah.
somebody that might be neurotypical with a neurodivergent individual. So do you have any understanding at all around how to even, you know, start to have those conversations if you are a leader? What does that look like?
Yeah, and I guess it depends on your own comfort zone too. So again, if we think about, you know, all leaders show up differently as well. I totally acknowledge it can be really tricky. I do think, again, it comes down to trusting that an individual deserves the agency to share what they want and not share what they don't want. And so that means a conversation can be really simple. It can be, hey, you know, assuming that they've shared already that they have ADHD or they are neurodivergent or whatever. Hey, given what you've shared with me about your ADHD, is that something I can talk to you more about? Because I want to make sure that this workplace is really well set up for you, and that I'm ready to respond and adapt as much to support you as I need to. And if that person says, no, I'd rather not talk about it, well, that's their prerogative, and that conversation already has been affirming because you've given them that agency to make a choice to disclose or not disclose anything more. And if they do choose to share, well, then follow that thread. I think being curious is really the key, and it doesn't mean then you're on the hook for I don't know. I think there's this nervousness that somebody will ask for something that you can't do. That's where that honesty just has to keep going. This is where my bounds are of what I can and can't do. But if we go with what's the purpose, what are we trying to achieve here? Let's work together through what some of those options are. And if that's too much on you, then let me take that away. Let me understand what the intent is of what you need support on, and I can work out some options with my colleagues and come back to you and have a conversation again.
Yeah, no, I love that, Claire, and I think that's great advice. What I would say is there's so many employers that have this, I'm going to say difficulty sometimes in, I'm going to say saying, I just can't do that. As an organization, we just do not have the environment. We do not have the facilities to do that. We will try everything we possibly can to accommodate and to support individual differences, but there's some things that we actually just can't achieve. You know, we're placed in an old building that, and one of my things I have is significant light sensitivity. But I think that there's a component for both, is the fact that, you know, it'd be amazing if we didn't have these fluoro lights everywhere for me, but the reality is in some environments we do. So what can we do, what is possible, and looking at working together on those things, I think, is actually, you know, really critical. But it's a relationship, right? It's about working together in a partnership. It's not necessarily somebody having all the answers, and I think that that's really, really important, and removing it away from the fact that people feel that it's an isolated activity. Part of any relationship when you're going into a role or you're working in an organization is about how do you get the best out of that relationship, and how can you both support what you're trying to achieve, really, to basically do your role in the most effective way that you can.
Exactly. And I mean, we have some of the coolest brains, right? Like we are so fortunate in that many of us can make these abstract connections and come with this creativity. We've had a client that had that mentioned that fluoro lights, and this is before we worked with them. This is separate to our work with them. And we came in, and I don't know if you've ever seen at IKEA over bassinets, they have these giant green leaves, but as many staff as wanted to had actually attached these giant green leaves over their desks. And it wasn't just a neurodivergent, it was anybody that just didn't love the fluoro. And so there's this like forest of green through this very formal, you know, quite dull otherwise government office. But the team had come up with that solution themselves. The organisation had backed it in. It's a really cheap fix that didn't involve like a full redo of the building. Everything is solvable. It just takes you know, creativity and care about that impact that you're trying to make.
And I think that's a fantastic, you know, word. You know, you mentioned it a lot. It's about how can you be creative with what you have. There's always solutions to overcome some maybe challenges individuals that have. What I would say as well, and I love the comment you made earlier, is that you know, people with or without some challenges, in this case with you know, fluorescent lighting, but you know, the reality is there's some things that just work for us all. You know, I find it you know, fascinating that you know, many moons ago, you know, when working with individuals that are neurodifferent and have sensitivity to particular sounds, you know, individuals were having, you know, headphones on and, you know, felt that there's a level of comfort. Nowadays, we've just got everybody that loves to have headphones on. So we've got this mix that we've got some people with headphones, you know, some people that, you know, enjoy it, some people that don't enjoy it. We've got, and there's not the assumption also that just because you wear headphones or vice versa, that you maybe have ADHD or, you know, or other. So I think it's fantastic. The more that you start to include different types of innovative strategies in the workplace, it becomes something that most people go, oh, I actually really like that, I'm going to have that, or never even thought about that, but that's a great thing to have, and people feel more comfortable.
Totally. And it opens things up to so many more people. So if I think about even, you know, just flexible work, and again, this won't work in all industries or all organizations, but we've been able to be a lot more flexible in terms of where and when people work than some of our colleagues in similar types of businesses. And what that's meant is, you know, new parents, older folks, like people in different life stages can work because they can work from wherever they need to work and whatever hours they need to work. You know, defense spouses, when their partners are deployed elsewhere, like it just not, yeah, the flow-on effects can be huge. And again, that's where the business benefit comes in. The business case doesn't need to be about what is the cost we're investing. It's actually like, what can we unlock by actually just removing a few of these sometimes quite simple barriers that just take a bit of care and curiosity to identify.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. I think it makes the world of difference. You know, one of the things I often talk to is my CEO, Hayley Dean, is really interesting because in my Melba walk of life, where I'm the chief operating officer, it's really interesting there because I went for an interview, and we joke about it. I went for an interview when I did my first interview, and at that stage I didn't disclose my ADHD or any of my challenges that I face with lighting or various other things. My interview was shocking. I was absolutely terrible with my interview. Anyway, the next time I actually went for an interview, I decided to disclose because I thought, hey, you know, we're going to give it a go. I need to kind of, you know, make a few changes. Anyway, there was a lot of help there around just literally dimming the lights and, you know, helping things to be a little bit quieter. And my performance was chalk and cheese. And we joke about that now because we say just by turning, you know, lights down or making some really, really quick, you know, little differences, made the difference between somebody that's a high performer or somebody that's struggling. And it's really easy to solve. And, you know, it's something that you can do so simply. And it's just the confidence for somebody to have that conversation to let you know.
Definitely. And I think, again, you know, we're not always going to get it right, and we're not always going to get it right the first time. But that's, again, part of being human. So if we can't show that, how can we also then say that we're affirming? You know, I know for me, one of the things that I have struggled with is I'm not great at the linear step by step, and some of my colleagues need that and prefer that. And so I've definitely stuffed up a stack of times when I've come in going, right, let's brainstorm and solve this problem, and I've left the team behind, and that's not affirming. It might be affirming for me, but that's not a shared affirmation. So we've had to test and try different ways of working that actually let my brain still work in the way it works best, and let my colleagues' brains still work in the way that they work best. And that's just, you know, humility and letting the awkwardness be totally okay.
Claire, I think you need to be giving me some tips. My team will definitely be saying that. Just checking you can hear me, that my mic's still on.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, just checking. I wasn't too sure if my mic had turned off then. I was just thinking, Claire, my team would be, whoever's listening to this now would be going, Claire, you need to give Mel tips because she's the one that's pushing off doing 1,000,001 things. And we're here going, hey guys, we're here behind, we need some help. Look, Claire, I could talk to you all day. so knowledgeable. This presentation has been fantastic, and I'm just going to say again, lots of people from this are going to be wanting to reach out to you and to pick your brains. So just to share again, can we just show how people can get hold of you again if you can, Claire?
Yeah, sure. So I think the best place to find me is probably just on LinkedIn. So Claire Thomas from Empact Group, that's with an E.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.